Have you ever felt like life started moving forward for everyone else, but somehow left you standing still? Like the people around you are reaching milestones, finding direction, building something meaningful, and you're still trying to understand where you belong. You watch as others seem to know what they're doing, where they're going, and who they've become. And quietly, without telling anyone, a question begins to grow inside you. Am I falling behind? It's a heavy feeling, one that doesn't show on the surface but lives quietly in the background of your thoughts. It shows up late at night. It shows up when you compare your life to someone else's. It shows up when you look at your past and wonder if you should have made different choices. But stay with this story, because somewhere in it, you might begin to see that what feels like being behind is actually something very different. In a small village surrounded by hills and narrow winding paths, there lived a young man who believed he had lost his way in life. When he was a child, he had dreams. He imagined who he would become, where he would go, and what his life would look like. But as the years passed, those dreams slowly faded into uncertainty. Friends he grew up with had moved on. Some had found successful careers, others had started families. A few had left the village entirely and never returned. But the young man remained, still searching, still unsure, still feeling as if he had somehow taken the wrong path. Every morning he would walk the same road to the market, and every day he carried the same quiet weight in his chest. Not a physical weight, but the kind that presses down on your thoughts, the kind that makes you question yourself. One afternoon, as he walked along a dirt path that led toward the hills, he noticed something strange. At the side of the road stood an old wooden sign. It was weathered and cracked, as if it had been there for many years. On it were carved several arrows pointing in different directions. Each arrow had words written beneath it. One pointed toward the city, another pointed toward the mountains, another toward the river, and one arrow simply pointed down a narrow, uneven trail with no label at all. The young man stood there for a long time, staring at the sign. Travelers passed by him, choosing their direction quickly and continuing on their way. But he could not move, because for the first time, he realized something that unsettled him deeply. He didn't know which path was his. As he stood there, lost in thought, an older man approached from the mountain trail. He walked slowly but steadily, with a calm presence about him. His clothes were simple, his steps unhurried, and his eyes carried the quiet look of someone who had seen many things. The old man stopped beside him and asked gently, "You've been standing here for a while. Are you searching for something?" The young man hesitated, then answered honestly, "I think I'm trying to find the right path, but I feel like I'm already too late." The old man studied him for a moment and said, "Too late for what?" The young man looked down at the ground. "Everyone I know is already far ahead. They know what they're doing with their lives. They chose their paths long ago. I'm still standing here trying to figure it out." The old man smiled softly and pointed at the wooden sign. "Do you see those paths?" he asked. "Yes," the young man replied. "Do you see how some are wide and smooth?" The old man continued. "And others are narrow and difficult?" The young man nodded. "Each person who passes this sign chooses the road that feels right to them at that moment," the old man said. "But what you don't see is that every road has turns. Every road has places where people stop, change direction, or start again." The young man frowned slightly. "But they still chose. I feel like I've done nothing." The old man bent down and picked up a small stone from the ground. He placed it gently into the young man's hand. "Walk with me," he said. Together they began walking slowly along the narrow, unlabeled trail. After a few minutes, the young man noticed something. The path was uneven. It twisted and curved. In some places, It was hard to see where it led, but along the way, there were signs that others had walked there before. Footprints, broken branches. Stones moved aside. "Tell me," the old man said as they walked, "do you think the people who walked this path always knew where it would lead?" The young man shook his head. "Then how did they keep going?" the old man asked. The young man thought for a moment. Maybe they trusted that the path would make sense later. The old man nodded. Exactly. They walked in silence for a while longer, until they reached a small clearing where the hills opened up and the sky stretched wide above them. The old man turned and looked at the young man. "You think you're behind because you compare your path to someone else's. But you don't know where their road bends. You don't know what they had to lose to get there, and you don't know how many times they had to start over." He pointed back toward the sign they had left behind. "Some people take the wide road because it feels safe. Others take the mountain path because it calls to them. Some realize halfway through that they chose the wrong direction and must turn back. But none of that means they're ahead or behind. It only means they're walking their own journey." The young man stood quietly, still holding the stone the old man had given him. "So, what about me?" he asked softly. "What if I'm still searching?" The old man looked at him with calm understanding. "Then you are exactly where you're meant to be." The young man felt something shift inside him as those words settled in. "For years," the old man continued, "you've been standing at that sign, believing that everyone else already knew where they were going. But the truth is, many of them felt just as unsure as you. They simply took a step forward, not because they were certain, but because they were willing to learn as they walked." The young man looked down at the stone in his hand. "Do you know why I gave you that?" the old man asked. The young man shook his head. "So you would remember this moment," the old man said. "Whenever you feel like you're behind, hold this stone and remind yourself that paths are not meant to be raced. They are meant to be walked." They stood there for a long time, watching the light stretch across the hills. For the first time in years, the young man didn't feel the pressure to catch up. He didn't feel the need to compare. He only felt something simple and unfamiliar: peace. In the days that followed, he still didn't have all the answers. He still didn't know exactly where his life was heading. But something had changed. He no longer saw himself as someone who had failed to choose a path. He saw himself as someone who was still discovering it. And slowly, step by step, he began to move forward. Not quickly, not perfectly, but with trust. If you look at your own life, you may feel like you're standing at that same sign, watching others walk confidently in their directions while you're still trying to understand your own. But what you don't see is how many people feel lost even as they walk. How many question their choices. How many silently wonder if they're on the right road. Feeling behind is often just the result of looking at someone else's timeline and measuring it against your own. But your life was never meant to follow someone else's schedule. There is no single moment when everything is supposed to be figured out. Some people discover their direction early. Others need more time because they are learning more about who they are. The time you spend searching is not wasted. The uncertainty you feel is not failure. It is the space where understanding grows. So the next time that quiet thought appears and tells you that you're behind, pause for a moment. Imagine yourself standing at that sign again. Remember that there is no race. There is only your path, unfolding at its own pace. And ask yourself a simple question: am I truly behind, or am I just still becoming? Because sometimes the path that takes longer to understand becomes the one that leads you exactly where you were meant to go.